Soccer is one of the leading sports in the world. With so many players striving to be the best, there is a debate as to what the best way to train is to improve the key components that comprise an elite player. Evidence shows that professional soccer players perform high-intensity runs every 72 seconds in a 90-minute match. High-intensity runs are defined as greater than 19.8 kilometers per hour. The recent emergence of using high-intensity interval training for improving soccer performance is still debated, but the ability to repeat high-intensity efforts is a key fitness component for team sports, athletes such as soccer players. The exercises for this study include HIIT and SIT. HIIT, or high-intensity interval training, is exercise performed at 80 to 100% of maximal heart rate that occurs for short amounts of time and is broken up by brief active or passive rest periods. SIT, or sprint interval training, is exercise at 100% of maximal oxygen uptake, or VO2 max, that is broken up between active or passive rest periods. So the purpose of this study is to look at whether or not high-intensity interval training or sprint interval training is an effective form of training to improve performance in elite soccer players. The subject for these studies were elite male soccer players. Elite male soccer players were defined as professionals or having more than 10 years of experience playing or competing at a national or regional levels. The ages range from 19 to 31. Athletes kept up with their regular training regimen and incorporated the different HIIT or SIT training protocols into their exercise. The first study did a 13-day microcycle with HIIT daily consisting of 4 sets of 4-minute sprints with 3-minute recoveries. The second one did a 14-day repeated sprint training every 48 hours, straight line and change direction, sprinting for 5, 10, and 20 meters. The next study did a 20-week with 2 HIIT sessions per week, 12 to 15 sprints, 12 for the first 10 weeks and 15 for the last 10 weeks of 40 meters with 30 seconds of passive rest. The next study did a 6 weeks with 3 sessions per week, 19 kilometers per hour for 60 seconds, 25 kilometers per hour for 35 seconds, and 30 kilometers per hour for 10 seconds, separated by 2-minute recoveries. The last study did 8 weeks of training with 15 seconds work period separated by 15-second passive rest. Work periods were distance that needed to be covered in 15 seconds, based on individual players' 120% mass value, which is maximal aerobic speed. Body mass and percentage of body fat was measured using a calibrated bioelectrical impedance balance. An incremental exercise test to exhaustion or graded exercise test with pulmonary gas exchange and de novo analysis was used to assess VO2 max. MART, or maximal anaerobic running test, was used for anaerobic capacity. MASS, or maximal aerobic speed test, was used for aerobic capacities using a graded field test, 30 meters sprint test, or a repeated sprint test, RSA, and the 40-meter sprint test. The YYRT2, or Yo-Yo Intermittent Recovery Running Test Level 2, is a soccer-specific test that evaluates the effect of sprint training on aerobic and anaerobic performance. The athletes had to run 20 meters back and forth to the sound of an automated system, but the time between sounds got shorter each time. The athletes run until they cannot keep up with the beeps. The total meters that they ran are added at the end. The PEPS, or the person's perceived physical state, has 4 dimensions: physical energy, fitness, flexibility, and health. team performance measurements observed to look at overall success of the entire trained team. The results of the studies are as follows. Body mass and percentage of body fat had no changes found before or after training protocols. VO2 max, there were improvements seen in VO2 max, and high VO2 levels were able to be sustained for longer durations post-training, but there were no changes were seen in VO2 max post-training. The anaerobic capacity, the anaerobic power, time to exhaustion, and maximal running speed improved in all of the high-intensity interval training groups. The mass, or the maximal aerobic speed, improved by 8.1 plus or minus 3.1% post-training. The 20 and 40 meter sprint times was significantly decreased post high-intensity interval training. The maximal aerobic speed improved, as did the time that the speed could be sustained in the high-intensity interval training post-training. The RSA analysis showed that the best sprint time did not improve after 13 days of high-intensity interval training, but that RSA time showed significant improvements after the 13 days of high-intensity interval training, when measurements were taken 6 days later. However, 25 days post-training, these improvements began to revert. The 10 and the 30 meter sprint speed was significantly decreased by 0.11 seconds and 0.12 seconds respectively. The YYIRT2 improved significantly by 298 meters in one case. In another, it improved for both the experimental and the control group. In another case, the YYIRT2 distance was improved post high-intensity interval training, and improvements were sustained 6 days and 25 days post-training, although more so at the 6-day mark. High-intensity interval groups were able to run further in the YYRT2 test post-training. There was no significant change in perceived physical state post high-intensity interval training. The team performance post high-intensity interval training did show some improvement. The high-intensity interval training group won 77.8% of their games post-training, compared to the control group, who only won 33.3% of their games post-training. Elite soccer players participate in large quantities of both aerobic and anaerobic exercise in the forms of short sprints and active recoveries such as jogging or walking, so it would seem that high-intensity interval training would improve athletes' ability to perform these activities. The purpose of this presentation was to evaluate whether or not HIIT improves the performance of elite soccer players. Body compositions at the elite athlete level was not affected by high-intensity interval training. High-intensity interval training may improve VO2 max when the training is performed for longer durations. 6 weeks is not a long enough training time to show improvements in VO2 max. Maximal sprint speed and the time that maximal sprint speed could be sustained improved by high-intensity interval training for all the time duration, 13 days, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and the 20-week studies. The ability to perform both sprints and active recoveries improved in all high-intensity interval training protocols. Overall, team performance was improved after high-intensity interval training. However, more research should be done here because there are many influential outside variables.